I love the question because what most people would consider high performing, normally when you think of a
Mhm.
high performance car or a high performance whatever, it's we do this thing super fast.
Right.
And I think that right now in our recruiting landscape is like everyone's got the same tech. Everyone can do everything the
Mhm.
same kind of way. Everyone's got like, I don't know, a Zoom info account or whatever you might want. And they can get access to all the same stuff that you can get access to.
Mhm.
So a high performing recruiter today, I think, yes, they need to make use of the tools that are out there, but a high performing recruiter is a person who can do the basics well.
Welcome to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am Trent Cotton, your host and human capitalist. Ask yourself, is your HR organization future proof? Well, we are going to dig into that very topic in this episode. In this podcast, we are going to tackle all of the topics that keep business owners and HR professionals up at night, from AI automation to transforming your workforce to meet the needs of the future. So, if you have employees, you're going to want to follow along and take a lot of notes. So, with that, buckle up, get ready. It's time to dig into this episode and transform you into a human capitalist. Let's go. All right. So my goal with this is just to take some of the awesome conversations that I have on LinkedIn and bring them into more of a video format because I just there's too many good conversations going on out there. And actually, I had one with the guest today, Brad Owens. We kind of nerded out a little bit on, I think it was pipelines and automation. So I wanted to bring that because I know I get a lot of questions about both of those strategies. But just a quick intro to Brad. He's got over a decade of recruiting and had the realization that changed his entire career. SalesForce is what recruiting world has been looking for, and he left the recruiting to join the SalesForce mothership. I love that. Helping them to stand up staffing and recruiting vertical. Brad is now teaching firms on how to get the most out of Salesforce based on his experience in their shoes and a deep understanding of what it takes to succeed in the platform. And I asked him what his superpower was, is that his brain remembers more in sync lyrics than anything from college. I can totally relate to that.
Why?
I
It's
don't
just
know.
like if I
I
could
don't
just
know.
clear all that out. I don't know if you remember this stuff. So think back to early computing days where you used to
Okay.
fill up your hard drive and you had to do that defrag thing where it used to
Yes.
move everything in
Oh,
the
I
right.
remember the defrag.
I need that for my brain. Like clear out
Dude,
all that in-sync stuff. You'll never need that. Can I make room for stuff
yes.
I actually want to learn?
Yeah. See, I'm one that remembers useless facts in history, like just completely useless, random stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if I were to defrag my brain, how much AI stuff I could learn. I could probably pick up, something a little bit more interesting than recruiting is, although recruiting has been very interesting lately. Um,
But see, then you wouldn't be as good in trivia nights.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah,
Trade-off.
yeah. I'm definitely one that you want to have. Whenever it comes to useless stuff in history. I mean, some of the stuff I know of people is just crazy. So, but I always like to ask anytime I'm talking to someone. I've got two questions I always like to ask. The first one is, how do you define high performance recruiting?
I love the question because what most people would consider high performing, normally when you think of a
Mhm.
high performance car or a high performance whatever, it's we do this thing super fast.
Right.
And I think that right now in our recruiting landscape is like everyone's got the same tech. Everyone can do everything the
Mhm.
same kind of way. Everyone's got like, I don't know, a Zoom info account or whatever you might want. And they can get access to all the same stuff that you can get access to.
Mhm.
So a high performing recruiter today, I think, yes, they need to make use of the tools that are out there, but a high performing recruiter is a person who can do the basics well.
Okay.
Someone who can go out there and actually create the relationships that we need to excel in this kind of business. That's the kind of person that's going to do really, really well. It's going to be high performing.
So, what are their? If you had to describe them as a superhero, what would be some of their superpowers?
Being curious, being able to ask questions, being able to like take it back to all of the basics that you understood as a kindergartner, right? You have two ears and one mouth. Like
Yeah.
ask questions, listen more. Amount of recruiters that so when I was running a firm, the amount of recruiters that I used to hire that used to just jump on the phone and be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Here's this position. Can you do it? Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? That was like, guys, you're not creating any kind of relationship. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And surprise, they'd never get callbacks.
Hmm.
Come on, y'all. Like if I started teaching them just little tiny questions. Case in point, the way that we started our conversation today, and no one's going to know about this, but the way that we started our conversation today is, what are you doing this weekend?
Right.
That's what's most important. That's what we want to talk about. Like the
Hmm.
high performing recruiters that are the best at what they do, in my book, and the ones that I've kept up with for the longest time, are the ones that are good about building relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I wrote a book, High Performance Recruiting, and it's so funny. One of my favorite traits, or I call it kind of the seven superpowers, is intellectual curiosity. I tell people that if I'm interviewing a recruiter and they start asking me questions that make me stop and go, I don't know why in the hell we do that. Like that make
Hmm.
I've never thought about that. That is probably 80% of the way that I'm like, all right, I'm going to hire this person because I enjoy, to me, I thrive on people going, is there a way that we can do this differently, more efficiently, more people focused? And, I think to your point, the recruiting industry is starting to lack that. Um, One of my favorite sourcing or kind of early recruiters that I worked with, she was weird. I mean, socially awkward. But this woman was unreal whenever it came to really, like you said, developing those relationships. I remember she called me one day. I was on the way home. This was back whenever, we went into the office, and she said, I need you to call this person before you pick your daughter up from daycare. This was years ago. And I said, okay, well, this can't wait till tomorrow. She goes, no, he is the top producer. I was recruiting mortgage at the time. He's the top producer at one of our competitors. And he said that he'd like to talk to you because he's got a ball and baby grand piano and he's learning how to play the piano. And I told him that you played the piano and you play it by ear, and he was fascinated. I'm like, okay, I will call him, but we're going to have to unpack how in the hell did you even get to that in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she knew, and she goes, and you got to call him now because it's the perfect time because he just dropped his daughter off from dance and he's about to go pick his son up from soccer. Like she knew all of these details. She knew he was a high performer, but she knew all these other things that, whenever I picked up the phone and called him, I was like, hey, Gary, so I hear you're in between dropping off and picking up, and it completely just lowered the walls. It took me a year to get him to make the move, but yeah, I think relationship building is kind of key. So why don't you tell everybody your story? Because you started telling, I was like, no, 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 we gotta wait, we gotta record this. It was pretty interesting. So go for it.
Sure. So I am a recruiter by trade. I did it fresh out of school because literally had no idea what I was going to do with my life. Fell into recruiting. Ended up getting in a small niche firm that kind of controlled the entire East Coast for just one very, very small niche. So
Hmm.
we all know riches are in the niches.
Yep.
So I was able to work at that firm for quite a number of years, ended up moving through the ranks, running the firm, exited the firm, did some consulting for a little while around hiring, did speaking engagements, all sorts of stuff. And then I ended up taking a internal recruiting leadership position. So I worked at a publicly traded company here in Cleveland. And during that time, that was the first time that I truly had to see the other side. As external recruiters, we kind of think a little
Yep.
bit differently. But so I took a different approach to recruiting. And what I found out really quickly was that, wow, our ATS was just absolute garbage. It did not work anything close to what I needed it to do.
Right.
And the hiring managers never wanted to use it. No one wanted to be a part of it. I'm like, why are we using this thing? So I started looking
Hmm.
around the organization to see what else is everyone using here. And in the sales org, they had SalesForce, which at the
Hmm.
time I never knew what SalesForce was. It's like, this is a sales tool. Great. It can do prospecting and you can track deals. Fantastic.
Right.
Oh my goodness. The first time I saw it, I went, it can do that? Wait, I do the wait, you tell I can make it? What?
Yeah.
Literally changed my life so much and changed my perspective on what tech can make possible that I went complete career 180. 100% complete career 180. And I went, I have to learn everything there is to know about the Salesforce thing. Where has this been all my life? And went down a crazy rabbit hole, got myself certified in Salesforce 3 times over, ended up working at Salesforce.
Oh,
I
nice.
I learned a lot of things there of how they were approaching different markets. And Salesforce very much goes after industries. And they'd not really been paying attention to staffing and recruiting before. So I started being well known inside Salesforce as the person who kind of could speak the language, and I kept getting
Hmm.
brought into more deals. And come 6 months after joining, they pulled me in to help build out the staffing and recruiting vertical that they started building. Started working with gigantic companies. It's kind of no secret that there's Robert Half on
Oh, yeah.
Salesforce. There's a Deco. There's a Legis. There's all sorts of different gigantic companies that are on this thing, which is good. I love that there's these big companies that could take advantage of tech, but it also makes it seem like this is an unattainable piece of technology that no one can really use, that it's so
Hmm.
complicated and too expensive and whatever. Excuse me. I am a 10 plus year recruiter. I learned this stuff. Anyone can learn how to do this
Right.
thing.
Right.
So since then, I've kind of taken on this evangelism role of, hey, recruiting firms, Salesforce is the game changer. You have to be able to take advantage of this.
Hmm.
So I found a an organization that actually builds an applicant tracking system that's based inside the Salesforce ecosystem. I've been working there and just helping companies really take advantage of the power that's out there that they never really knew existed.
That's awesome. Isn't it funny? I have a love-hate with most applicant tracking systems because it's built for recruiters, but really it's built for an HRS.
Yeah, you're
And
not wrong.
yeah, and kind of like you, whenever, because see, I came over from sales, so I came over from being a lender and calling on people and developing and prospecting, and we used Act at the time. This was how far back it was. Owned by Sage now,
Yep.
or I don't know what the permutation, but I mean, I had everything. Like I didn't have to think. I would just boot up my computer and it says, here's who you need to follow up with, and here's what you need to
Yep.
follow up with them about. It's perfect. I
Yep.
looked organized. And so I can nearly imagine what Salesforce does. So it makes sense why pipelines are such a hot topic for you because I mean it's very easy to track in Salesforce
Exactly.
because I've used Salesforce before, an earlier iteration of it, and it's incredibly easy to use. Do you find that a lot of recruiting organizations use pipelines, and if so, are they doing it correctly? And if they're not, why aren't they doing it? So kind of a three-pronged question for you.
Sure. So talk to me about what you consider building a pipeline. It's different for everyone that I talk to, which is why I ask.
These are people that I want to work in the organization because they have the skills, the competencies, and the soft skills that I know will be successful in the market, but I just don't have a job for them right now. But I want to
Okay.
keep up with them. They're a target for me.
Right. So you've got this warm relationship now. Now you want
Hmm.
to keep that thing going.
Right.
So now that I understand a little bit more, ask me the question again, just to make sure.
All right. So do you find that most recruiting organizations use pipelines? If not, why? And if they do they do it well?
So when it comes to developing a pipeline of warm talent, of people that
Hmm.
you want to keep in your sphere and call on them once you have an amazing job for them. Uh, I know that I was a victim of this when I was recruiting. When I used to come across someone that when my metric that I needed to hit for that day was send outs and then hires and placements,
Hmm.
those are the types of metrics that I was judged on. When I found someone who was a good person, like they had great
Right.
communication skills, I know they had something that was going to be a good fit. They just maybe be outside the salary band or they live in a different geography than I needed or whatever. I would put them into the ATS and be like, cool, they'll come up when I do another search. And I'd move on and I'd try and talk
Hmm.
to someone else who's going to make me money that day. As
Right.
a 20 something, that's what I was super excited about, making more
Hmm.
money. That first commission check, you're like, oh, I like this. I need to do more. So I
It's
wasn't
addictive.
fantastic at building a pipeline. I never
Hmm.
really was good at building those relationships until I got tech that actually helped me to do that. But it's the next story. I feel like most recruiting firms, and I don't fault anyone for doing this because I was in your shoes and I did the exact same thing. But let me play out a scenario. You get a new search. You've been working for the past month in a job at Pittsburgh where you've just been crushing hard. You've got three different jobs you're trying to fill in Pittsburgh. All of a sudden, something opens up in, I don't know, Cleveland, nearby,
Hmm.
but not Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
Very first thing I ever did, I'd jump into LinkedIn and go, who else can I find? Or I'd
Yeah.
go post the job out on Monster or Career Builder or whatever was hot that day. And I would go out and I'd try and find brand new candidates, not thinking, wait a minute, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, they're pretty close. I probably got some
Hmm.
people in my database that may at least know some people. They probably go to networking events together, or someone's nearby or something. Or maybe I need to look for colleges that are around there. I never went to my database first. I turned to trying to find a brand new candidate.
It's
And that
exhausting though. When you
it
stop and you think
is.
about it, it's exhausting.
It is. So the fact that I used to think that putting all that time into going back into my database and trying to think about what would truly make a good fit for this position and where I might find those people,
Hmm.
rather than calling on my network and calling all the people that I wanted to keep warm with anyway, and trying to discover who in my relationship sphere had relationships that would lead me to that right fit, I try and start from scratch every single job. It's just, it does not make sense. And
Yeah.
honestly, most recruiting firms still fall into that now. Even the big guys, they do the exact same thing. When they have candidate databases with millions upon millions of candidates, like who doesn't know about Robert Half that's in, I don't know,
Right.
finance and accounting? Who doesn't?
Hmm.
But I have sat in Robert Half's branches, multiple of them, and I've seen how they go about researching for new candidates. There are branches who sit there at their desk hoping they'll have walk-ins so that they can find someone for the next job.
Still,
Still, like y'all, you have a database.
wow.
So there are multiple, multiple people that I know still do this to this day. But I can tell you there's better ways. There's such a better way.
There is, and um, I was asked whenever I ran a pretty large recruiting group for an international bank. I was asked by a podcast host one time, "What's one thing that keeps you up at night?" And I'm sure they were thinking about changing regulation or whatever. I said, "How many candidates are perfect for the organization for open jobs that we have right now that are sitting in the applicant tracking system being ignored?"
Yep.
Because we pulled, I think at one time we had 75,000 people. It's mind-boggling to me to just kind of think. I mean, whenever I was in sales, if I had a database of 75,000, oh my gosh, I'd be like salivating at the mouth, like
Mhm.
who's in there? How can I get them? But I think, do you find that a lot of organizations just completely just do not understand the goal that they have? And if so, like, how do you work with them to help them tap into that pot of gold?
I think it comes down to how they're incentivized. It all comes down to how to make money. Like that's how we get
Hmm.
our junior recruiters to get excited in the first place. They get that first commission check that comes in and they go, "Oh my gosh, I'm on track to earn over six figures as a 20 something." And they go, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be insane." So they get really excited about making that next placement. And that's where our KPIs are. And when we measure towards the outcome and not towards the actual effort or relationships or um, the amount of repeat customers that they get or the amount of repeat placements or long-term relationships or something like that, we don't measure towards that. We don't incentivize them
Hmm.
doing the right things. And when I think to how we can actually start improving on this type of thing, I haven't figured out the best type of metric to go after. I think it's a leadership style. I
Hmm.
think by leading with, hey, we're creating relationships here. Yes, we're making placements, but placements come from relationships. I think it's coming from the top of here's how we're going to address everyone today. Here's our search process. Here's how, I mean, you can't make use of everyone that's in your CRM if you have crap data going in. You'll
Right.
get crap data out.
Hmm.
So I know it sounds tedious to a lot of people that are just like, I need my producers to be on the phones, but all of that data that they're putting in and what they're tracking and how they're tracking it, that's your gold.
Yeah. So do you help, because it sounds you kind of got that sales mindset, even though you came into recruiting. I mean, one of the big things that most successful sales or growth engines have is what are those leading activities that hit or lead to the goal being accomplished? So, it's traditional funnel within sales, how many prospects in order to get one sale, and it's the same in recruiting. Like, how do you help organizations understand that metric? Because to me, that's a very powerful component for selling the value of keeping a good, strong talent pipeline.
When you say the metric of, the old adage of it's all just a numbers game, like as long as you start reaching
Yes.
out, eventually you get to the win.
Yeah. Yeah. That, maybe not so necessarily that, but what, for me, how many calls and interviews and what are those activities? How much time is needed to be spent sourcing? I like to track that on the team because it helps me be able to look a little bit down the line and say, okay, these activities here, what do they produce? And if something's not working, then how do we fix it? But if something did, like we just blew the doors off, I'm going to go back to those leading activities and find a way to scale them. I would imagine that Salesforce has got some way of kind of tracking some of those types of metrics, or does it? I don't know. It's been a while since I've worked with Salesforce.
Oh, without a doubt, it does. I mean, you're talking
Hmm.
about for the longest time, we've all built firms where we say, okay, you are my recruiters and sourcers, you are my sales team.
Hmm.
They all kind of do the same sorts of
Right.
things
Right.
in they're all making the same kinds of calls. They're all trying to get somebody to say yes. They're all trying to get through that entire from a cold person all the way through a warm to an actual yes. Like that's what we're trying to
Hmm.
get everyone to do. So the recruiting process lends itself incredibly well to how Salesforce is set up. We make outreach to leads, whether that's to people or to organizations where we want to find jobs to work on. We make that cold outreach. We
Hmm.
take them through a buying process. I'm using air quotes like everyone can see me, but I'm using air quotes to say it's a buying process because we're trying to get someone to buy in to say yes to a new job. We're trying to
Right.
change their lives. And that is a huge thing for them. So it's not easy to do, but we need to get them to the point of saying yes. That's exactly how Salesforce is built. Now, how you do that inside Salesforce, when you bring up, hey, I have people that might be on the phone more than others and they're more successful. Is that more successful because they're taking longer to build a relationship, or is that because they're asking better questions to get
Hmm.
people thinking about the right things? When you think about how Salesforce is built, yes, it is a funnel tool from the outset. That's what it's meant to
Right.
be. It takes people from leads to an opportunities to a one.
Hmm.
That's what they do, or to a win. Now, how you do that inside Salesforce is completely up to you. I loved when I was there and I saw firms taking advantage of kind of the best of the best. They were taking advantage of tools that would record phone calls. Let's say you're having a Google
Hmm.
Meet or a Teams meeting or whatever it is that you're talking, or even on the phone. They have Einstein activity capture. They have call record Einstein call insights. They have a number of different things now where you could go back to that high producer and you could look through
Hmm.
their previous calls and search by keywords, or you could show, hey, what are the top 5 questions that this person keeps asking on repeat? And you could start seeing at a glance, like really, it would take you no time at all to look and see, wow, this is not only what it takes to be successful, but here's what you say. Here are the questions that they asked. Here's how long they spent with this person. Here's the percentage of time that they talked versus the person on the phone talked. Like it's just incredible what you can start getting out of there. So if you want to scale best practices, Salesforce is an incredible way to do that.
See, I didn't even think about it from that vantage point. That's because the big thing, like the whole start is, why is this person more successful than the other? That question as a leader, I don't know that too many leaders actually stop and take the time. They just go, oh, he's just my top performer, but they don't find a way that how, to your point, what are some of the questions that they're asking? How are they getting some of this information out of a candidate? How are they positioning the opportunity? And how can I replicate that? That's what I was talking about. What's working and how do we scale it? That's a fantastic opportunity. I think that's missed if you're not using something like Salesforce, honestly.
Well, and technology in general, just period. I mean, Salesforce is amazing. There's other tools that do it, but Salesforce, I think,
Hmm.
would be probably the easiest one for most people to pick up. I could talk about the ecosystem for days and how easy it is to find someone that can help you on Salesforce. But
Right.
when we think about us as recruiters and us as salespeople too, we're very competitive. We have competitive genes. We have to win. If someone else is
Hmm.
winning, we're just going to beat them by pure brute force if we have to.
Right. Right.
That doesn't lend itself well to us as leaders who came up from that, saying,
Hmm.
I see someone succeeding, I want to emulate that. And I want
Yeah.
to spread that throughout my team. That's not innate to us. To us, when
Hmm.
we see someone that's succeeding, we're like, I'm going to do it a better way. So it does take a lot of curiosity, and it takes a different gene that a lot of us haven't flexed in our careers in a long time.
That's true. That's true. But I think too, it probably gets down into your um, kind of your mindset. Like some people compete out of trauma and insecurity.
Mhm.
Um, I like to compete because that's a motivating factor. We did strength finders at one organization, and there was 14 or 15 of us, and um, the consultant was going through who had what strengths, and she said, "There's only one of you that has competition." And the whole room looked at me and I'm like, I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, it is. I am incredibly competitive. But one of the things that I found interesting is as she was going through like the motivation, she said that even whenever there is not a competition, people with this strength create a competition because that's how they get going in the morning. That's how they measure success, and that's how they iterate to improve. And I kind of laughed. And she says, "What's so funny?" I said, "I swear for the longest time, I thought I was weird. I thought I was the only one that did that." It's kind of comforting to know that there are other weirdos out there like me that do that aspect.
Yeah, watch out
Um,
when they all get in a room together too.
oh God, yes, there's blood on the dance floor.
Yep.
So what if, I guess, what are some of the things that you've learned about helping recruiting organizations get this? To me, it's a pipeline mindset. Because yeah, you can put in pipelines, but if you don't have that mindset, to what you were talking to earlier, like what are some of the things that, like, how do you help recruiting organizations adopt this pipelining mindset?
So we tend to start with where they're currently at, right? Like, what
Okay.
is if you are making this certain number of placements, what is the activity that has to get you there?
Mhm.
Why? How much effort is it actually taking to get to this part? How can we reduce the effort that it's taken you to get to this win that you want? So we truly go through and look. We're like, what's your business process? How do you all start out? How do you start searching for candidates? How are your recruiters looking? If they get a brand new job, how are they assigned that job? What do you have daily stand-ups? What sort of information do they get? How much detail do they have on this job before they actually go out and start sourcing some candidates? What do they do when they start sourcing? Where do they turn to? What's their first point of contact? It's just learning. It's just understanding how they actually do
Mhm.
business. And the easiest thing for me to do at that point is say, okay, here's how you currently do things here. What of this is just admin work? What is this part that
Yeah.
you're doing that can be automated? Because when we think about how Salesforce can be applied, Salesforce is fantastic at taking care of all the admin work.
Yeah.
One of the big pain points that I used to have as a firm owner was all of my metrics that I wanted my recruiters to track wasn't automatically tracked in my system. They literally had to go back at the end of the day. How many calls did I make? How long was I on the phone? They had
Oh,
to go back and do all
Jesus.
those things manually. So having a system that can go through and say this person's on the phone this many times, had this many emails, had this many replies, spent this much time, asked this many questions per week. Like, those are the types of things that I want to help people get from their
Yeah.
system by just purely using the system. Like, data should
Mhm.
be easy to get if they use the system. So it always comes back to their initial pushback is always, well, I don't want to track all this stuff. I don't want to put it on my team to have all this other administrative work. I'm like, well, let's take that off their plate. Now that we have some time back in our week, even if we're an hour a day, if someone had 5 hours a week extra, what could they do with that time? How
Wow.
incredibly productive could they be? Even if we just talk about an hour at the end of the day or taking some time away from sending those emails or whatever it might be. How much better would your entire staff be if they could walk for an hour a day? I don't know. It doesn't have to be being productive, but just think about the types of things that we can do that can improve these recruiters' lives just by taking that admin away. And once we start opening them up to, oh, we don't have to do things the way we have been, we might be able to open the door to do a lot more things. Then they can start dreaming and start understanding, okay, let's get back to basics. What are the things that will absolutely make us money? Building relationships. Cool. How do we do more of that? All right, here's how we start building this into our process. And they can really open up what's possible for them. And
Hmm.
that's probably the easiest first step is to think, what are you doing today that could be automated and just done away with purely by using a better system?
Well, I do think that because we were going to talk about automation, I really think that we could probably speak a whole nother 40 minutes just about the automation. So I want to save that particular piece. If like for you, I mean, are you able, like, if someone goes, "Hey, the Salesforce thing sounds kind of cool," I mean, they can reach out directly to you. I'm sure you can kind of walk them through what some of the options are.
Please, yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
there's there is one particular place that I can send everyone to see what the best of the best are doing inside of
Okay.
Salesforce. I run a number of different things every single week. You can follow me on LinkedIn if you want to. It's just, if you search Brad Owens, I should come up. I run Salesforce for recruiters, where I literally am just showing people how amazing Salesforce can be for the recruiting agency out there. I have not only sat in your seat as a recruiter, I've also sat at Salesforce selling the software. Like I know every single thing there is to know about both sides here. And I help people not make the same mistakes that I did. Because it took me a long time to figure out how to use Salesforce for a recruiting firm because it's not a use case that most people have. They've never seen it done that way. So I want to share all that stuff with everyone. So if they go to salesforceforrecruiters.com, they'll be able to find everything they can ever
Oh,
want to know
very
about
cool.
Salesforce.
That's awesome. So let's do some rapid fire.
Bring it.
All right. So what is a book that changed your perspective on business or recruiting, and why?
Not going to be a surprise based on the conversation so far, but How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Listening to that book, the very first takeaway from that book was be like a golden retriever. And at the
Mm,
time I had a golden retriever, they will do everything for you. They will want to hear about your day and sit there and want nothing but just a little head scratch. And they will hear you talk for hours and you are the best thing that ever happened in their life. Be like a golden retriever to others.
I love that.
Biggest takeaway.
Favorite podcast or series?
The podcast that got me hooked to podcasts way back when was all of the original Tim Ferriss stuff.
Oh yeah, that was some good stuff.
He put it into a big book, Tools of Titans,
Yeah.
that I've got over on my bookshelf. But that's some incredible things. If you want some life hacks, Tim Ferriss's original podcasts are amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so funny. One of his famous books, The 4 Hour Work Week. You know, everyone's like, "I just want to work 4 hours a week." I'm like, "You missed the entire point of the book.
Yep.
You missed it completely. That ship sailed right past you."
Speaking
Um,
of automation and things you could do in your sleep, Salesforce.
right, right. Little plug there.
Yep.
So where can people find and engage with you outside of LinkedIn?
So I'd love if people just came and talked to me directly. Easiest way to do it is bradowens.com. I squatted on that URL a long time ago, and that's the best place to find everything about me.
That is awesome. Yeah, I just purchased mine, trentcotton.com. So trying to get that up and rolling because, I had high performance recruiting, I had sprint recruiting, I had like two or three others. I'm like, we'll just put all this under my name. It makes it easy and I can remember the website, hopefully. Although the other day I was giving it to someone and I misspelled my own name. That's where the state of my union is right now. All right. So to wrap up, what is your one-liner to kind of close out the session? Something that everyone can remember and put into action.
I love using the line that Salesforce is the best application out there with the worst possible name because Salesforce is not just for sales.
I love that. I love that. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I will definitely be getting on your calendar so we can unpack automation. But this was a fantastic topic. I really appreciate you. You're my guinea pig. I think I was telling you in the green room, the virtual green room that we had. So I look forward to our next conversation. And everyone can find you on LinkedIn and bradowens.com. Definitely go check it out. And thanks again, Brad. I really, really appreciate you joining.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. Thanks for making me your guinea pig. I appreciate it.
All right. And that is a wrap on another episode of The Human Capitalist. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in and invest your time with me today. I hope that you walked away with some valuable insights and actionable strategies that you can maximize your greatest asset, and that's you. But hey, before you go, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that way you can stay in the know. The human capitalist movement begins with you. If you have some feedback, feel free to leave it. I'll read every comment. I want to make sure that the content that I am delivering is what you want to hear. If you want to connect further, you can find me at my link down below. I'd love to hear from you and continue this awesome conversation. Well, this is Trent Cotton, your human capitalist, and I'm going to sign off. But remember, invest in yourself, own your potential, and keep building your human capital.